Comment je fais pour enlever ton micro? Comment est-ce que quoi? Je fais pour mettre pas.
Just doing a sound check. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you're good, Mike.
Okay.
Yes, you're good.
I think we'll just wait another minute or two. We're expecting, I think, a little larger crowd, so I'm just going to give a couple more minutes in case some people are struggling to get on there. All right, I see we got about 30 people on. Decent turnout. I thought we'd have a few more where it's online, but I do know, I think there's some kids got EDP, so they may join in a little bit. Jeff, just a reminder to hit the record button. So for everybody on here, the session is going to be recorded, and we'll make it available so that you can go back and view the content should you want to. Just a reminder, because there's a fair number of brand new officials on here. Again, I'll remind you, don't get overwhelmed with the content that we might be talking about tonight. We are going to have a clinic on Monday night, in person at NBCC, for new officials, anybody in that 1 and 2 year range for officials. And then we'll also have a gym session for the new officials on October 30th, where we're going to cover content a little more applicable to you in your first and second year. However, the material that's going to be covered tonight, certainly good for you to listen to, because it's just going to help you in your officiating career. So with that said, I think I want to turn things over to Ryan Langdon, who's going to kick us off with, I think, another couple IoTs or points of emphasis. So Jeff, did you have anything to say?
No, I'm good. The the session that we had in person, as soon as I figure out how to get that video up onto YouTube, I'll share a link for that for people that missed it.
That's from the last week's session?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm up for an Academy Award for Best Director for classroom lecture recording.
I'm sure you are. Yeah, I have no doubt in my mind.
Was Jeff going to start off with some game plan and that kind of stuff, or do you just want me to go?
I think you're going.
Yeah, you can go right in.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to another training session. For those of you that were at the training session last week, this is going to be very similar to that. Fortunately, it might be a little bit less interactive where we're doing it over Teams today versus in person, but it's all relatively the same content, same type of stuff. So we're going to start off with the points of emphasis for this year. These points of emphasis come from CBOC, so it's something that they want done at all age groups, more applicable to some age groups compared to others, but we'll just briefly go over them, and we will take it from there. So let me see if I can get this sharing to work. Everyone see that?
Yep.
Wonderful. So points of emphasis are things that CBOC, which is our governing body in Canada, feel that maybe weren't officiated to the best of our abilities last year, and things that they want us to emphasize this year, to make sure that we're continuing to emphasize things and continue to move the game forward. So we'll just jump right in. If anyone has any questions or anything, if the chat is working, you can write them in chat. Otherwise, raise your hand and I'll get either Mike or Jeff can just cut me off and we can get those questions asked, okay?
So I tried the chat a bit ago and it doesn't appear to be working for some reason.
Yeah, it was telling me to refresh as well, so.
Yeah.
Not sure. Either way, you guys can raise your hand and we'll get your questions answered. So first point of emphasis for this year is the principle of verticality. So if anyone was at this session last week, we talked a little bit about verticality in one of the IoTs that we're talking about. We saw some video about verticality. So this is definitely a very important point when we look at refereeing games, because if we don't referee the principle of verticality correctly and consistently from the start to the finish of the game, that's when players and coaches can have questions for us of what are we calling and all that kind of stuff. So if we can get verticality nailed down, then that'll definitely help us as we move throughout a game. So I'm just going to skip down through. This PowerPoint is available on Game Plan. So hopefully everyone should have logins to Game Plan. If not, then I'm sure that will get sorted out shortly. But it is available on Game Plan. So I recommend if you want to go any deeper into any of these, that you go into your Game Plan account, look through the slideshow, because there's some videos in here as well that'll help to reinforce these points of emphasis. So our principle of verticality, every player has a right to occupy any position on the court not already occupied by an opponent. So we call that the cylinder principle as well, is another name for it, but the principle of verticality. So they're entitled to their cylinder on the court. Their cylinder is basically their body width stance in an athletic stance, okay? So this principle protects the space on the court and the space above when jumping vertically. Okay, so not only is it when we're standing on the floor, but if a player jumps straight up and down, then that is still within their cylinder. A player who leaves their cylinder and makes contact with an opponent who has already established their cylinder is responsible for the contact. Okay, so if we have a defensive player who has established legal guarding position and is within their cylinder, and the offensive player leaves their cylinder and goes into the cylinder of the defensive player, then the offensive player is responsible for that contact. And vice versa, if an offensive player is in their cylinder, the defensive player reaches out of their cylinder with their arms or their legs or anything and makes contact with the offensive player, then the defensive player is responsible for that contact. So defenders should not be penalized for leaving the court while remaining inside their cylinder. So that means defenders should not be punished for jumping vertically. Okay, so that's the whole principle of verticality, is if a defender is in legal guarding position and they jump vertically, we should not be penalizing them if they have their legal guarding position. Okay, and the offensive player, whether on the court or airborne, shall not cause contact with a defensive player in a legal guarding position by either A, using their arms to create more space, or B, spreading their arms or legs immediately after a shot for goal. Okay. So stuff that we won't see as much at our local level, but definitely some stuff to think about. You might see a little bit in some high school games, if anybody here is doing some high school stuff. If we have 3-point shooters, everyone's trying to mimic the NBA now, right? So we're all seeing people kick legs out and flail their arms everywhere. So the game is getting more difficult to referee, and we need to make sure that we're seeing the plays from start, develop, finish, and refereeing these principles of verticality. Okay. Our second point of emphasis is rebounding. So this is one that is important at no matter what level of basketball that we're refereeing, because every game will have rebounding situations. Okay. So this is why it's a point of emphasis this year. It was identified as something that we should work on as referees in the spirit of the game to help, again, move the game forward. So a big thing with rebounding is making sure that we're refereeing the defense. And the defense and rebounding might not be the team that is on defense. So the defense and rebounding is more so we need to referee the player who's on the inside. Okay, if we're refereeing the player that's on the inside, then that's the player that's typically going to have better position, and that's the player that we'll be able to see is if they're being put at a disadvantage or if they're being affected by any outside influence from another player. Okay. Another one, and this IoT we will talk about tonight, is stay with the play. So rebounding is really important to stay with the play because rebounding happens on both sides of the basket, but the ball will only go to one side of the basket. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're being patient. We need to make sure that we're seeing what's happening with the play, seeing the start, the develop, and the finish, and then making a decision on whether or not that we want to call a rebounding foul. Okay. Third one is bench decorum, something that we don't see a whole lot of, but is starting to see more of again. Even at the lower levels now, we're seeing a lot more coaches that are a lot more vocal, a lot more teams having multiple coaches on the benches. So this is something that we really want to take control of, right? When we referee, we're in control of the game, and we need to run the game, okay? So bench decorum may sound silly that we have to take care of that, but it is part of the rules. It's part of stuff that we need to take care of. Okay. So some of the key things for bench decorum, and I know it's different at all levels, and especially if we're at younger levels where we're trying to do a little bit of teaching as well. But I'll say for the high school level for sure, we want to be talking to the head coach and the head coach only. So if there's multiple coaches on the bench, our point of contact with the bench is the head coach. Okay. If there's questions coming from the bench, they should be coming from the head coach. If we need to address anything with the bench, they should be addressed with the head coach. Okay. So some other things with bench decorum is we need to make sure that players are sitting down while the ball is live. Okay. That's not to say that they're not allowed to get up and cheer for their team when they do something good. That's fully all well and something that we should encourage from the players. But we need to make sure that they aren't standing up. So they get up, they cheer, they sit back down. And the reason for that is, we don't want it to look like there's more players on the court than there is, especially when in the second half now, they're on defense right in front of their own bench. That's really, we don't want it to look like there's 6, 7, 8 defenders on the floor because we have 2, 3, 4 people standing on the bench. Okay. It makes everything seem smaller. It may put the offensive team at a disadvantage. So we need to make sure that we're taking care of that. After that one, our next point of emphasis is legal guarding position and specifically oblique contact. So this one's a little bit more complex, but really all that I'm going to talk about with this one is that we want to make sure that we're, like I said last week, we want to make sure that every time we're picking up a defender, we are determining if they've established their legal guarding position, which, as we said last week, is 2 feet on the ground facing the offensive player between them and the basket. Okay, that's the first thing that we're looking for every time we pick up a defensive player, every time we referee the defense. Do they have legal guarding position? The oblique contact goes into another level, and I'll let anyone who's interested just go into the presentation and read a little bit about it. But for me, for Moncton area, I feel like this point of emphasis should just be legal guarding position and just picking up, does the defender have legal guarding position? If yes, they're allowed to move sideways, backwards, and obliquely, any way other than towards the offensive player. Okay. Again, there's lots of clips in here that are very good to look at if people are interested in going in and taking a look at that. And then the second last one, so there's a lot this year. The second last one is covering a shot and protecting the shooter. Okay, so I think everyone would agree with me that jump shooters are very obvious plays. Okay, they happen usually out in the open, away from the basket. There's not as much congestion around jump shooters. So if they get fouled, it's usually fairly obvious to people in the gym. So we need to make sure that when we're covering these shots, that we're protecting the shooters as much as we can, because when they go airborne, their active shooting does not end until both feet are back down on the floor. Okay. So when we're covering a shot, let me see. we're going to talk about this 1-2-3 technique, okay? So this is something that's very easy to implement into when you referee a shooter, and it really is just a way to sequence your eyes so that you know exactly what you should be looking at and when, okay? So if we look at the 1-2-3 technique, this picture here is a great picture to define what the 1-2-3 technique is. So as I said, a shot is an obvious play, and if we miss fouls on obvious plays, that's when we're going to take a lot of grief, okay? That's when we're going to have players upset with us, coaches upset with us, and that's what we're trying to avoid if we can keep running the game smoothly by getting these obvious plays correct. That should be goal number one, okay? So we need to referee the defense, which is one of the IoTs that we talked about last week. And if we're refereeing the defense, then we use our 1-2-3 method. So if we think about how a jump shot works, the first thing that happens is the ball is released from the hands. So that's the first place that we should be looking. So that's number one, is the hands. So not just the hands, but it's really the arms. So the wrist down to the elbow. We're looking for any contact from the defender, illegal contact from the defender between the wrist and the elbow. If there's no illegal contact in zone 1, then we're going to move our eyes down to zone 2. Zone 2 being the body. So if zone 1 is clean, then we move down to the body. Does the defender move into the jump shooter space, make contact with their body? If so, then they went into the offensive player's cylinder, and that should be a defensive foul. If there's no contact on zone 2, then we move our eyes down to zone 3, which is the feet. Jump shooters are entitled, as I said, to their landing space, and their jump shot ends when both feet return to the floor. Okay, so we need to look and referee the defense. Where does the defender's feet go? Do they go into the landing space of the offensive player, of the jump shooter? If the jump shooter comes down on the defensive player's feet, we have a defensive foul. Okay, so that's a really easy thing that we can implement for our jump shots. Every single time that we see a jump shot, as I talked about last week, with our self-talk, we're not only self-talking who our defender is, but we're self-talking, okay, I have a jump shot. I'm going to use the 1-2-3 technique, hands, body, feet. If that's clean, then I know that I've stayed with the play. I've refereed it all the way through to the end, and I'm good to go and find my next thing to do. Okay. And the last point of emphasis that we have is running the game and dead ball efficiency. This one is important at all levels because especially, we have a minor tournament throughout the weekend. We have, say, 30 games to be played throughout the weekend. We need to keep things moving on time. And that's partly the players' and coaches' job, but it's also partly our job because we are in charge of the game. Okay. So the biggest thing with that is dead ball efficiency. So being efficient when the ball is dead, whether that's on out of bounds, getting the ball back in quickly, if we can, whether it's, a team is called a timeout, we need to make sure that we're getting over to those timeouts and breaking those timeouts so that we can get the game moving again. Okay. That's our job as referees, is to keep the game moving, make sure everyone's ready to play once we're ready to play. And keep things moving and running the game, okay? Anybody have any questions about any of those points of emphasis? It's kind of just a crash course on our points of emphasis. Again, that PowerPoint presentation with the extended information is all available on Game Plan with videos. I recommend that if anyone has any or wants to look into any of those points of emphasis any bit further, then they go find that PowerPoint on Game Plan.
Looks like Sam has a question, right? Maybe. Or he hit his hand by accident.
Yeah, no, I do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted your opinion because I'm a tall guy. I wanted to know kind of when over the back applies, like having a height differential. When does that
Sure.
when is it too much?
Sure. So over the back is technically, we don't use the phrase over the back. I know it's a phrase that players and coaches use a lot, but you're allowed to go up and over somebody's back. What you're not allowed to do is push through their cylinder to go over their back. Okay. So that's more what we're talking about. It's not over the back, it's through the back. Okay. So if we're in a good position and we're refereeing that inside player and we see that they're vertical in their cylinder, and now we're looking with the outside player, does that outside player go through the position of the inside player, or do they simply go straight up and reach over top and there's no contact in here? Okay. So that's what we're looking with rebounding stuff and over the back is, does the player go through the player's position, or do they go straight up, get the ball, and then come straight back down? Because that's perfectly allowed. It's just what we want to prevent is and officiate is the players going through the cylinder of the player in front of them. Does that answer your
Perfect.
question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Scott, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one, Ryan. You talked about our cylinder. Maybe just talk for a second about the shooter recognizing that the defender has become airborne and jumping into him.
Right. Yeah. So that's a good thing. And again, like I said, with everyone trying to mimic the NBA, you see Steph Curry, you see James Harden, everyone, they're trying to draw fouls from referees. So the shooter, we're protecting them when they jump within their cylinder. Okay. If they jump out of their cylinder, so if they see that there's a defender in front of them and they jump forwards out of their cylinder, then we're not going to bail out the offensive player because they jumped out of their cylinder to create contact. Remember in that slide, it said a player who leaves their cylinder is responsible for the contact. So if the offensive player is the one that leaves their cylinder, and that includes jump shots, if they jump forwards into a defensive player, then we can't call it defensive foul because we have to ask ourselves again, what did the defender do wrong? If we can't answer that question, we can't have a defensive foul. Okay. So if the offensive player is jumping forwards out of their cylinder, or let's say they jump straight up and down, they see that a defender is going to fly by on their right side and they kick their leg out to the right, outside of their cylinder. Again, we don't want to get drawn into calling defensive fouls every time there's contact on shooters, because we need to make sure that the offensive player, the shooter, is staying within their cylinder. If they kick their leg out, if they reach their arm way forward or out to the side to create that contact with the defender, then we need to identify that that's happening and then make a decision based on that. We can't have a defensive foul in those situations. Getting to a higher level, we may have an offensive foul in those situations if it's affecting the player who is defending the shot. But that's all stuff that, those are more complex situations that we won't really see on a day-to-day basis at the local level. I see another question, Michael.
Yeah, what would be the call if a shooter gets fouled after he lands both feet on the ground?
After they land both feet on the ground, so if they go up, they go down, they're both feet on the ground, the defender has not made contact yet, defender then goes through who was the shooter after they're 2 feet on the ground, it's no longer in the act of shooting. Okay. So if they go up, they go down, and then we have contact, we're no longer in the act of shooting. So it would be just a regular non-shooting foul, unless we're in the penalty, and then we would shoot penalty free throws. Any other questions on the points of emphasis? All right. Well, let's move on. So we're going to cover the first IoT here now. Let's go share. Stay with the play. Let's go window. Share. All right. So if I do this, do you guys just see the PowerPoint or do you see the notes as well?
I can
We
see
see
both.
the notes as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I want that. Well, we will do that then. All right, we'll go plan B. I have the notes on my phone. What are we doing first? Just stay with the play. So we will jump right into our next couple of IoTs. So first one we're going to talk about is staying with the play. Okay. So a couple of learning outcomes. We need to understand the meaning of the term stay with the play. So what does it mean? We need to understand the importance to stay with the play until the end of the action. So why is it important to stay with the play? And then we need to identify ways that we can stay with the play in any situation. Okay. So let's see. Not really an activity, but we'll just talk about it. So officials must ensure that they are observing all parts of the play. So this includes, what does it include? We've talked about it numerous times because it's really how we should be officiating every single play. We need to see and observe the start of the play, the development of the play, and the finish of the play. So that being the start, middle, and finish, okay? Our decisions on what happens with that play shouldn't come anywhere other than after the finish of the play, okay? We don't want to be making foul calls after the middle when we see a contact before the play has finished, okay? Typically, if there's contact, it's the middle of the play. It's not the finish of the play. So we need to be patient. We need to stay with the play. We need to see the whole play, and then we're going to make our decisions after. So what does stay with the play mean? So staying with the play until the end of the action. So again, start, middle, finish, end of the action, then we make our decisions, okay? What we don't want is to be leaving the play in the middle of it and then missing the finish, and something big happens in the finish of the play, and now we've missed it. We need to keep our eyes and concentration on the play until it ends. Again, same thing, staying with the play until the end. And then mental and physical components. So mental, we need to be mentally focused on the defender until the play has come to its end. So in the example of what we talked about with jump shooters, the end of the play would be the jump shooter has 2 feet on the floor. The defensive player has boxed out. It's all clean. That play has ended. Now we can go in and help with rebounding situations. Okay. Another way to stay with the play mentally and physically, this one being physically, is on a shot. So when a shot is released, if we're the trail referee, we need to stay with that play, and we shouldn't be leaking backwards towards the center of the court, towards the center line. That kind of just brings us, it makes us disengaged from the play. It takes us out of helping with rebounding. So it leaves 10 players going for a rebound, all to the lead. If we as trail, if we step away from the play, or step out towards the center of the court after a shot has gone up, okay? So physically, we need to stay where we are when a shot goes up, or even take one step towards the basket. That will help us mentally stay with the play and help with those rebounding situations. Okay, so we have some video. What I'm gonna, oh, our chat doesn't work, does it? What I planned to do was send these links in the chat, but we will just watch it. It's probably going to be pretty choppy, but we will do our best. All right, so we're just going to watch this video from start to finish, and we're just going to think of it in terms of staying with the play. Okay. So what I want you to look at is what's happening on this play. We want to watch the body language of the officials, and what does that body language tell us? We want to see where are the officials looking, and we want to see, are they in athletic stance and ready to react to a play? Are they leaning or turning away from the play prior to the end of the play? Okay, so we'll watch it through. Hopefully it's not too choppy for everyone. All right, so I will just share some of my thoughts. So this is the trail referee is refereeing this play, this shooter. We'll see the trail referee come down. They get into an athletic position. They get into a position where they can see the space between the offensive and the defensive players. so that they can see what contact happens between the offensive and the defensive players. This referee does a good job to stay with the play, to see that the defensive player moves forward into the path of the shooter, creating contact and then calling a foul. So we'll just watch it again. So we see this official right down here at the bottom of our screen, right below the time. They're in a very good position. They're trailing the play. They can see the space between the offensive and the defensive player. They come to a stationary position, and they're refereeing the shooter who comes out. They mark the shot. We see that this defender comes into the landing space of the offensive player. The offensive player lands on his foot, and we correctly assess a shooting foul. Okay, good work by the trail referee. Some other things to be aware of. Let's look at our other referees and what they're looking at. So this is a trail play. I know this is a 3-person, but we'll just look at where the officials are and what they should be looking at. So we'll look at this lead official first. Let's back up a little bit. So again, at the start of the play, the lead is in a good athletic position. One thing that I would like to see is that they will be refereeing these people. It looks like right now they're refereeing the ball. So they're ball watching a little bit. They don't need to be. Our trail is here coming up the floor. They can referee that play. If we go forward a little bit, the ball goes into the middle. The lead, still in an athletic stance, is now no longer refereeing on the ball. They're refereeing the rebounding action. So again, good job by the lead referee. Now let's look at the referee on the other side. And I know this is 3-person mechanics, so a little bit different from what people know. But again, we see this referee is in a stationary position. They're in an athletic stance. They're refereeing the ball as well, which is fine because they don't really have anything over there to deal with. One thing that the center referee does is they mark, which says that they're refereeing the 3-point shot. But if we watch their eyes follow the basketball. We don't need to watch the basketball. We'll know if it goes in or not. Okay, we need to keep our eyes on the players because that's where the action is for us as referees. Okay, we don't need to watch the basketball. We need to keep our eyes down on the players. So that's the one thing I would say about the center official. Okay, does anybody have any questions or anything about that video clip? Nope. All right, let's move on. So we'll talk about some ways that we can stay with the play now. So some different play situations. During a held ball, we maybe step in. We don't look away until all the players disengage, okay? Not as much of a big deal at the younger age groups. They haven't really developed enough of an attitude to do anything, wonky or weird. But definitely at the high school level, you never know what kids are going to do, okay? If we have a held ball situation, no one wants to let go of the ball. They all want to be the ones to be touching it last. Step in, make yourself known, stay with that play. Don't look away until the players have disengaged. So if you're the referee that's right in front of that held ball and you call that held ball, your partner can be the one who deals with figuring out what way that the arrow is pointing to figure out whose possession the ball is. But you as the referee that's calling that held ball needs to step in, needs to make sure that there's nothing weird happens between the players, take control of the game, take control of the situation, and stay with that play until all the players let go and disengage. We need to make sure that we're not turning away from the play when signaling. So this is something that I've had to work on myself. Coming down the floor, if we have, we're calling a travel as trail. What we want to do is we want to come to a stationary position, put our hand up for a violation, still facing the play, make our travel call, and point in the direction that we're going to play. What we don't want to do is we come down, we see a travel call, we turn away from it, turn our backs to it, make our travel call as we're walking away, okay? Again, we never know what's going to happen after the whistle. We need to stay with the play, even on small things like that. Okay, so our chest and our body should always be facing towards the play, towards the center of the court, where the action is, so that we are not missing anything. So when we turn our backs to things, that's when we're going to miss some weird stuff. Staying with the shooter until the play ends. So we've talked about that one a fair bit already today. So with the 1-2-3 method, we stay with that player until they go up. We referee 1, 2, 3, being hands, body, feet. Once they come back down to the ground, 2 feet on the ground, the box out from the defensive player is clean. There's nothing else to do here. That's when that play has ended. That's when we can move in and do something different. If we have a hard foul, so if we have a hard foul or maybe something that looks bad, or if we have something that we're upgrading to an unsportsmanlike foul because it's excessive contact, we need to be staying with that play for sure. Because what we don't want is for the player who got hit to get up and retaliate to that. Okay, so if we call a foul, it's a hard foul. If we take a couple steps towards that play, put ourselves in between those two players, that's called closing to the scene. If we stay engaged with that, then we'll help diffuse the situation and prevent any retaliation from the player who got fouled. Following players all the way to the ground or to the wall when they're fouled on a drive. Okay, so this is very important because you know, as we said, a player's shooting motion does not end until they have 2 feet on the ground. That includes for players who are moving and making layups. Once they're airborne and off of the ground, they're entitled to their landing space, even if it is 3 feet, 4 feet in front of them. If there's no player in legal guarding position between them and their landing space before they leave the ground, no one is allowed to move in between them and their landing space. So that's why it's important that we follow that player. We're refereeing the defense, so we're seeing if any defenders are stepping into that space of the airborne player before they're back onto the ground. Okay, so staying with that play, those layups all the way through until they're back on the ground. And following players to the wall, being if we have a small gym, for player safety reasons and everything, and just knowing what's happened. We need to know if a player hits the wall hard, do they hit their head, anything like that. So if we look away and a player hits their head on a wall after doing a layup, and we don't know what happened, you know, maybe we should be stopping the game because they just hit their head really hard and they need to get checked out. And if we turn away from the play, we don't see that. Okay, so that's very important. Cross-stepping to maintain play coverage. So we briefly touched on cross-stepping last week. Cross-stepping, what it means is moving in the opposite direction that the ball goes so that we can keep seeing the space between the offensive and the defensive players to maintain our open angle, like we talked about last week, okay? So if you're in the trail position and you're on the left side of the court, per se, if that drive goes to the left towards the left sideline, what we want to do is we want to cross step to the right so that we can maintain play and stay with that play and maintain coverage all the way through to the end of that play. Okay. Adjusting our position as appropriate to maintain play coverage. So as lead, we want to be refereeing from the outside in, or we want to box the players in. Okay, so if we're on the edge of where the play is, if we're on the edge of play, we're position adjusting or adjusting our position every time that people move so that, again, we're seeing the space between the players, we're seeing the open angles so that we can referee the defense and make accurate decisions. Not bailing out on rebounding. So that's what we talked about a little bit earlier. When a shot goes up as trail, we want to stay engaged with that play. We want to take a step towards the basket to make sure that everyone knows and to help ourselves stay mentally engaged with that play. By stepping towards the basket, we're staying involved. We're refereeing the rebounding. And then once there's a clear possession on a rebound, that's when we start either staying there again because it's an offensive rebound, Or once there's a defensive rebound, a clear and obvious defensive rebound, that's when we start running down to our new position as lead on the other side of the court. And last one, identifying the shooter on shooting fouls as the non-calling officials. So no one likes it when we forget who the shooter is. It feels bad. We've all done it. I've done it. That's where on shooting plays, our partner can really come in to help us, okay? So because as the calling official, the one who's calling a foul, we're looking at all these different things like the contact criteria. Does the defensive player have legal guarding position or not? If they don't, are they causing any illegal contact on the shooter? If they are, okay, I'm calling a foul. What's the nature of the foul? Is it a hit? Is it a block? Is it head contact? What's the number of the player that I'm calling a foul on? All that stuff is going through our mind to a point where we might forget who the shooter is. So as the non-calling referee, so if the trail makes a call, as the lead, if we can come in and stay with that play and help them identify the shooter, it's a simple, if number 6 is doing a layup and the trail referee calls a foul, the lead referee can come step in after that whistle is gone and the play is dissipated and say, okay, number 6 is our shooter. Identifying that shooter as the non-calling official, staying with the play to make sure that we put the right free throw shooter on the free throw line. So we have another video here that we will look at. Let's see. This one. All right. So in this video, it's three-person mechanics, but we're just going to look at it in terms of staying with the play and stuff like that, okay? So the center referee, so not the trail, not the lead, has coverage of the shooter, but doesn't recognize or anticipate the play on the shooter by the white defender, okay? So what we want to do is we're just going to watch this play, see the center referee, watch their eyes, see if they stay with the play from the start, develop, finish. If not, then we're going to talk about maybe why and what they could have done differently, okay? So this referee here, I believe, is the one that we're going to be watching. So a lot happening in that play, okay? So this is the referee that we're watching. We're watching the shooter and we're watching what their eyes do. So waiting in, we'll pause it. So right now, that referee has a good position. They can see the space between the offensive player and the players that are going to be closing out onto that shooter. By the looks of it, with where their eyes are, they're refereeing this player right now. If we continue a little more, they're still refereeing this player. And to be honest, they're a little bit closed off to this player. They doesn't even look like they know that this player is there. So once this player, this player closer to the baseline, closes out and turns away, there's another player in between that one and the shooter, this defensive player that's closer to the center of the court. Okay, so their eyes, this referee's eyes, never really picked up that defender. Okay, and we continue. So now look at where their eyes are. Their eyes are again either with the ball or they've already moved to their rebounding action. So what did we say earlier? We said earlier that we need to see the start, the develop, and the finish of the play. We specifically said for shooters that the start, develop, finish includes the 1-2-3 method, being the hands, the body, and the feet. That's where I feel that this play broke down for this referee. They didn't stay for the 1-2-3. They didn't see the end of the play, and they missed contact on the shooter. Okay, so again, we talked about jump shooters are obvious plays. They're plays that we need to get correct. This defensive player is not in a legal guarding position. Okay, they're moving forwards toward the shooter. They don't go around the shooter. Again, moving forwards, they make contact with the shooter's body. That's zone 2. If this referee had stayed with the play, they would see that contact and they would call a foul. Because they didn't stay with the play, they move their eyes to the rebounding matchup too early, and they missed the foul, which is a fairly obvious foul. Okay. Yeah. So staying with the play all the way through the start, the develop, the finish. This referee stayed with it from the start, the first half of the develop, and then left it. And we see when we leave plays before they're done, when we don't stay with the play, we make incorrect decisions and we have incorrect calls or incorrect no calls. Any questions about that video? All right. Moving on. So some things that we can do to improve our ability to stay with the play, okay? Have an active mindset and anticipate the play. So again, like I said last week, we're not anticipating that there's going to be a foul on this play, that, oh, I have to call a foul here soon because this person's going to foul that person. What we want to anticipate is I have a matchup in front of me. I need to move to a correct spot to be able to referee that play. So we need to anticipate that we're going to need to referee the matchup that's coming in front of us. So we need to anticipate where we need to move to referee that play. Okay. So that's what we talk about that's what we mean when we talk about anticipating the play. We're not anticipating the foul's going to happen and that we need to blow our whistle. We're anticipating what's going to happen with the play and where we need to move to see that play. We need to be focused on the right thing at the right time. Usually that means refereeing the defender, okay? But it also means staying with the play until the end. So like that case of the jump shooter, staying with the play until they're back on the ground. We know there's no contact. We focused on it from all the way through the start, develop, finish, and then we've moved to the rebounding. That referee in that video decided to focus on the rebounding, which was not the right thing to focus on at that time. And because of that, they missed the foul call. Adjusting your position. So basketball is all about adjusting our positions to maintain our open angle, like we talked about last week, and seeing the space between the offensive and the defensive player. If we don't have an open angle, then we make our position adjustment so that we see our open angle and we referee that play. Staying vigilant and focused after the whistle. So staying with the play after a whistle has gone, so that we're making sure that there's no funny business, no weird stuff happening after the whistle. Our attention should always be with the play, and that includes when the ball is dead. Okay. Not turning away from play to make our signals. So we talked about it earlier. We don't want to turn our back to the court to make a signal. We always want to be looking at the court because that's where our job is, on the court. We don't want to leave the scene without assessing after a foul. So like we talked about with the hard foul, stay on the scene, make sure that there's no retaliations, anything like that. And once we're sure that everything is good, there's nothing going to happen, that's when we leave to report our foul. Having the appropriate body language. So again, staying with the play, the body language of after a shot goes up, we're going to stay and lean in towards the basket versus stepping away from the basket. We want to be relaxed and calm demeanor when we're stationary on the floor. And that'll help us to relax our mindset, to relax our eyes so that we can see the play more clearly, and we're not making any emotional calls or anything like that. Self-talk, again, something that is going to help a lot of people if you start doing it, to referee the defense. We're self-talking that we're refereeing what defender we're refereeing. We're self-talking that we want to stay with the play. We're self-talking that we want to do our 1-2-3 method on shooters. Okay. And then don't bail as trail. So again, once the shot goes up, don't bail out. We're in no rush to get down to our position on the other end of the court as lead, because we could have an offensive rebound. So we don't bail, we stay where we are. Once the rebound has been secured, then we decide what way we're going. So that is it for staying with the play. Does anybody have any questions about that presentation? Feel free to ask them now.
A quick question. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's Mike.
Yep.
Okay, on the last video you showed, the center didn't see it. If the trail saw that angle, or even the lead saw that angle, maybe they shouldn't have been looking there. For the sake of the integrity of the game, would you have whistled something?
That's really a tough one to come all the way across and get that as trail and lead. So if we look at the video again, let me share 1 second. Share my window. So I believe you can see my screen again. If we look at where everybody is, maybe the trail has the ability to come across the floor and help with that play. But if we look where they are, they're stepping in for rebounding. They're not even looking over here like they shouldn't be. Okay, this
Right.
is absolutely a center's play. As lead, they see that a shot's going up, so they're backing out, and they're going to turn their eyes this way into the middle of the court. So also, if we look at it from the trail's perspective, they have what we say is a closed angle, right? They don't see any space between offensive and defensive player, so they don't know, is there actually contact there? We can
Okay.
probably venture to guess yes, but that's a long ways away. That's a long ways away from the trail and the lead. The center is right there. We need to just get to our fundamentals of the center, stay with that play, trust that our partners are going to handle the rebounding until the shot is finished, all the way through to the end, and then we go in and pick up. So I get what you mean by the integrity of the game. We want to get these obvious calls correct, but it doesn't mean that we break down our fundamentals as the other referees. Because if one of the other referees is to make that call, then their fundamentals have also broken down. Because either this referee here is guessing because they're calling on a closed angle, or this referee here is probably also guessing because they also don't have a good angle because they have 1, 2, 3 players between them and that action.
Okay, good. That's clear. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about staying with the play? No? All right. We will move into the last IoT that we have to present. This one is, share my window, distance and stationary. All right. Distance and stationary. Okay. So it is exactly what it says. We need to have good distance from the play. We don't want to be too close. We don't want to be too far away. And we need to be stationary. Okay. If we're moving, that means that our eyes are probably bouncing up and down, and our call accuracy is going to go down. So some things that we're going to look at. Introducing key concepts of distance and stationary. Understanding the impact of maintaining a proper distance from the play and being stationary when making the call. So it has a big impact on how we officiate. And then officials will be expected to understand these concepts as complementary to other IoTs and adopt them into their on-court skills. So when we talk about IoTs, I know we present them individually, but we've already seen how much every single IoT plays into one another, okay? So they're individual officiating techniques. They're individual in that they're techniques for you, the individual. They're not individual in that they're one single IoT and another single IoT and another single IoT, okay? So we have a list of IoTs and they all have something to do with each other, okay? So we need to be taking them all and working them all together so that we're improving our on-court skill set. So what does the optimal stationary position and distance to the play look like? You can just think about that question to yourself. What do you think that the optimal stationary position looks like, and how far away from the play is it? Okay. What is the correlation between call accuracy as well as readiness for the play and distance from the play? So what's the how does our call accuracy change with how far away we are from the play? There's a high correlation between call accuracy and readiness for the play, with having optimal distance from the play. Okay, if we're too far away, we might not be able to have good angles, so we might have closed angles instead of open angles. And since we're so far away, it takes so much more effort and much more distance to move to get those open angles. And on the other hand, if we're too close to the play, everything looks faster. So picture yourself sitting in a big stadium, say at the Avenir Center, watching a hockey game, watching a Wildcats game. If we're sitting in the back row of the Avenir Center, the hockey game looks much slower. Everything looks slowed down. We can see everything much clearer. If we're sitting next to the glass of the Avenir Center, right on the ice, then everything looks much quicker, right? So we need to take that into our officiating as well. We don't want to be right next to the play because everything's quicker. That increases our chances for what we say is an emotional call or an emotional reaction. It means that we may not see the start, develop, and finish of the play. Because we're so close to it, we may see the start develop, say, oh my God, that's bad, and then blow our whistle. Whereas if we have proper distance, we see the start, develop, finish, we say, you know what, that's not actually as bad as it may seem to be, and then we make a decision. When is a call most accurate? Two things: when we have proper distance and when we're stationary. If we're moving when we make a call, as I said, when we run, our eyes bounce up and down, so that's going to decrease our call accuracy. So as much as possible, we want to be stationary. I know it's not possible all the time. We have to move in a basketball game. We have to constantly be adjusting our position. We have to run from one end of the floor to the other. But when we're set up in our setup position, we want to make small movements and be stationary as much as possible, adjusting our position as often as we need to be in a stationary position to referee the play. All right, so distance. When refereeing the play, it is critical to maintain an appropriate distance from the play. So the distance is how far away from or close to the play that the official is. Okay. I already talked about this. Look at that. I'm ahead of everything. So visualize that you're courtside versus visualize you're in the back row or in the upper deck. Okay. The speed of the game is very different. Okay. You see the players' movements look slower when we're farther away from the court than they do at court level. And as I said earlier, everything will look quicker if we're too close to the play, and it'll slow down if we have proper distance from the play. So what happens when we are too close or too far away from the play? Well, a lot of bad things can happen when we're too close or too far away from the play. Okay, so let's talk about what happens when we have proper distance from the play. When we have proper distance, the possibility of an emotional call or reaction decreases. Okay, and again, that's because the play has slowed down. We have a bigger picture of what's happening in the play. We see the start, the develop, and the finish of the play, and then we make a decision. When we're too close, that emotional call or that reaction increases because when we're close, everything's faster, everything looks bigger. We feel like we need to make calls because everything looks worse when we're closer to the play. Movements look slower when we have proper distance. So same thing. The possibility of an emotional call goes down because everything looks slower. We have a better view of what's going on. We see the start, develop, finish, and we make decisions on the play. We can maintain a wide angle with more players in our field of vision. So if we're too close to the play, all we're going to see is those two players that are involved in the play. If we're trail and we're refereeing a player with the ball and we're too close, when we're outside in the trail position like that, one thing we always need to be thinking of is, are there any screens coming? Is there ball screens happening? If a ball screen comes and we're too close to the play, we're not going to be able to see that ball screen because we're too close. we have a narrow angle, and we're not going to have those players in our field of vision. It's going to catch us by surprise, and we might make an emotional call, especially if a screener is legal. The player who's defending the screener doesn't call the screen to their teammate. Their teammate runs into the screen. Even though it's legal, they run into it hard, they fall down. We're going to get drawn into calling illegal screens because we're too close to the play. Action looks quicker, and we're not seeing the whole play. Whereas if we step back, we have proper distance from the play, we see that screen coming, we have time to see the start, develop, and finish of the screen. We see that the screener has set a legal screening position. The defender runs into a legal screen and falls down. We maybe don't make that call because we're farther, we have distance from the play, we see it all, and our reaction decreases. And we're also able to see the big picture with proper distance. So much to the same of what we just talked about with those screens, we're able to see the big picture. We can see more players, we can see more of the court, we know what's happening around us and around the ball, and we can see more of what we need to be seeing on the court. All right, so we'll take a look at this picture. So as we see, the farther away we get from that referee, the more people are in the referee's line of sight. So the red area is the referee's line of sight. We said that this first row, there's only 2 people. The second row, 2.5, 3, right? And as we get further back, we get more people in our field of vision. So I'm not saying that we need to be standing behind center court when the play is all up inside the 3-point line. That's too far away from the play, right? So we need to find a good position, a good distance from the play where we're able to have a big picture, a wide angle, and see all of the players on the court that we need to be seeing. We are going to skip that. So let's look at this. This is just a still shot. It's not a video. So let's look at these 3 referees and let's look at their positioning. So the first question, do all 3 referees have correct angles and a view of players in their primary field of vision? So again, I know it's 3-person, but let's just look at their position, their distance, and their stationary. Do they look like they have good distance from the play? Do they look like they're stationary when refereeing the play? My answer for all 3 of these referees is yes. They all are in good distance. The trail is up and just behind the last player. They're not way back at the center court. The lead is in a good position. They have a wide angle. They can have a good distance from that play. If that lead was right in here on these Olympic rings, do you think that their position is better? Do you think that their distance from that play is better or worse? For me, it's worse. You're closer to the play. Your potential for a reactional call increases. So this lead has good position from the play. The center as well, good position, good distance, stationary, and everything. One thing I will say is if we look in this still shot exactly, let's look at the trail's head. Again, it looks like the trail's head might be looking up at the ball. Very important to not be looking at the ball when we have all of this action happening underneath the basket, okay? We'll know if the ball goes in the basket or not. We don't need to see it. What we need to see is this action here, specifically this action here between 7 Blue and what looks to be Nikola Jokic, okay? That's what we need to be looking at, not whether or not the ball is going in the basket, okay? So they can see the players in their primary field of vision. They can also, because of their distance, see the players in their secondary field of vision, okay, in their secondary areas. So realistically in this play, there's only one action area. It's underneath the basket. That's where the play is happening, okay? But if there was other plays happening in other areas of the court right now, if there was other rebounding matchups, all 3 referees would be in good position to see A, the primary area, and B, whatever secondary area were to happen. because they have good distance from the play. They have a wide angle. They can see all of the players on the court. Any questions about that picture or what we talked about with being having good distance and being stationary on that play? All right, let's move on. That looks like that because it's a video. So we're going to play this video clip, and we're looking at distance and stationary. Okay, so we're going to be watching this referee that we can see on the screen. Let's look at their administration of the throw-in. Let's look at where they go when they're running up the court. Let's look at where they go when they set up in their position, and let's think about distance and stationary. Okay, so constantly be thinking about that as we watch the clip, and then we'll start it over and we will talk about it bit by bit. Okay. All right, so we'll just play it again. All right, so lots to break down in this one little tiny 15-second clip. Okay, so let's start with where they are for the throw-in. They have very good distance from the player who's throwing the ball in. They're in a good position here. Okay, we don't want to be right next to the player. We don't want to be counting time right in their face. We want to hand them the ball. We want to take a couple steps away, and we want to chop the time in and count on our throwing clock. Okay, so right in this still on the screen right now, they have good distance from the play. They're stationary when they referee the throw-in. There's not really anything to referee right now anyways, because this player is not really doing anything, but we'll see that changes as they go up the floor. So we'll watch this referee's position as they move a little further forward. We'll stop it here. Rule of thumb for the trail official, it's called the trail official for a reason. We want the trail official to trail the play. I'm not saying that we want the trail official to trail the play by 30 feet. I'm saying that we want the trail official to be just behind, 2 to 3 feet behind the last player on the court. Okay, so we see that as this referee starts moving up the court, they get in front of the player with the ball. And I know that there's nothing really happening around the ball, but what would happen if this defender right at center court steps up and all of a sudden starts playing really close defense on the player with the ball? Well, now this referee would have to look backwards towards it instead of being in a proper position just back here, maybe 3 to 4 steps, 3 steps behind where they are right now, and refereeing forwards towards that play. Because again, if they have to look back to referee, now they've lost their big picture view. They no longer see the rest of the court. They can't help with anything else that's happening on the rest of the court because of their improper distance from the play. So they come to a stationary position. This is okay. And for 2-person, this is definitely not a bad position. Okay. They're a little bit ahead of the ball again still. So again, we would like to see them maybe 2 to 3 steps back from where they are, trailing the play. But with respect to how far they are on the court, the ball is, kind of past center court, past the middle of the court. So maybe we don't want them to be that far onto the court, but maybe a step or 2 versus 4 steps. Okay. So maybe if they were back by the C of Toyota Center and a couple steps behind the ball, that would probably be a better position than where they are right now. However, what we see is they do become stationary, so that's good. While their distance is not good from the play, they are stationary, so they do that part well. Again, he becomes stationary as he referees that screening action. And now he's going to move and position adjust as the play moves to maintain an open angle. So we kind of see now that because of where this referee positioned themselves initially, they've lost track of where they are on the floor. Because they've had to have their head turned to the left so much, they're not at a 45 degree like we talked about last week. We want to be 45 degrees. They're more straight up and down with the court. They have their head turned directly to the left so that they can referee what's happening with the ball. They have no idea that this player, number 10 in red, is standing where they're standing. Okay. And because of that, now we're in the middle of everything. So because they didn't have proper distance from the play to begin with, now they've kind of lost where they are on the court. They don't really know where the players are because they have to adjust their head, and now they don't have a big picture view. So red makes that pass. He's not expecting it because he doesn't even know that this player is here because, again, we had improper distance from the play. He was, if we scroll back a little bit, again, he's ahead of the play again, okay? We don't need to be ahead of the play. Even if he's in this far on the court, but behind the play, he won't get hit with the ball. But because, again, we have improper distance, we're up ahead of the ball. We're now in this passing lane from the player who has the ball and the player that we don't know is there. We're in that passing lane, and when that player with the ball makes the pass, hits the referee, goes out of bounds. Whereas if we have proper distance from the play, we stay behind the play by a step or two, behind the ball. We're more towards the sideline. We're stationary. This situation never happens like this. Okay? So something that you don't see very often, especially not from some of the best referees in the world in the NBA, just goes to show that if your fundamentals break down, weird stuff happens. Okay? And if we think about it, we're in a 4-point game with 1 minute left. A very bad time to have our fundamentals break down and have a blunder like this, because inevitably they make the correct call. The referee is standing in bounds, so they're part of the play. They're part of the court. When the ball goes out of bounds, it goes out of bounds off of red. So it goes blue ball. But if that referee is not in the incorrect position, if they have proper distance from the play, they're never in that place to begin with, and we don't have to be talking about this situation. Okay. Any questions about that video before I move on? No? All right, so why is distance important? Well, number one, so that we don't have something like happened in that video happen to us, being the big one. So it is the key to positioning of officials in lead and trail, whether if we're refereeing 2-person, or lead, trail, and center if we're refereeing 3-person. So distance is the key, okay? So one of the most important things is our distance, because if we have improper distance, then every other IoT will also start to break down, okay? If we have improper distance, we won't be able to referee the defense. We won't be able to be stationary because we're too far away, so we need to be moving to get a correct position. So it's the key to having proper positioning. Distance is important for judging optimal distance. Judging optimal distance to the play is fundamental to establishing correct angles and open looks, right? So like we talked about last week with positioning open angles, having proper distance. If we're too far away from the play, then we can't make those correct angles because we need to move too far to be able to get those angles. And then we won't have open angles, we'll have closed angles. And lastly, finding the correct distance to the play increases with practice and experience. So being in the 100% perfect position is not going to happen every single time on every single play, okay? It's something that comes with practice. It's something that comes with refereeing more games and being more comfortable on the court and knowing where we should be with different types of plays, okay? It will come with practice. You'll get comfortable on the court. You'll get comfortable with where you should be looking. And all of that just comes with repetition and with time. So let's talk about stationary now. So being stationary means staying in the same spot for a period of time, right? That's the definition of stationary. Often referees that are engaged with the play are not conscious of whether they are moving or not. Because we're engaged with the play, we're not conscious of whether or not we're moving, we're stationary, what we're doing. Some advantages of being stationary when making a decision include our eyes are not bouncing around. So if our eyes are level, we're stationary, eyes are level, we have more chance of making correct calls. Our concentration will be increased because we're not worried about moving around. We're stationary. We have the open angle that we need, and our concentration on that play goes up. Our focus as well will go up. Correct decisions are more likely. As I said, if your eyes are bouncing around, chances are you might miss something. So our call accuracy will go down. Whereas if we're stationary, we're more likely to make correct decisions. So these 4 things are really the fundamentals to our stationary. Okay, so you note that it doesn't say get to a spot, stop, get to your setup position, stop, and stay there, right? This says before this, it should say setup position is number 1. Number 2, when we lose open angles or when plays change, we need to move so that we can get our open angle back. Once we do get our open angle back, we stop and we become stationary again. Once we're stationary, we observe the play, observe what happens, and we make decisions. Do we call a foul? Do we not? Do we call a violation? Do we not? Okay. Being stationary to make a decision does not mean officials are not expected to move with a purpose. Officials have to move to obtain optimal distance and angles. Anticipation is important so officials can be in the correct position when a decision is made. Okay, so again, we're anticipating the play, what's going to happen with the play. We're not anticipating we're going to have a foul here, so I need to blow my whistle. That's not what we're anticipating. What we're anticipating is where's the play, where is it moving, where do I need to move to be able to referee the play. When we can understand that, that's when we're going to make our position adjustments, we're going to stop, we're going to be stationary, and we're going to make our decisions. It's just some examples of stationary stances from some referees here. So we note that they look relaxed, they look confident, they look stationary, right? They're not rigid, they're not moving all over the place. I know that they're screenshots, but we can tell that they're not moving all over the place. They're relaxed, they're refereeing the play. So we have one last video that we're going to look at. So we're going to look at stationary and distance. We're going to put it all together into one here, okay? So we'll watch the clip first. We'll watch the officials. We'll keep in mind their distance and are they stationary when they should be stationary. All right, so a good video to break down from all 3 officials' perspective. So if we just start and watch a little bit. So as this ball is coming up the floor, we need to be anticipating the play and anticipating what's going to happen. We know that this player in red is in an active guarding position, so they are looking to actively guard the ball. So as this trail referee, we need to be expecting that, and we need to put ourselves in a position where we're in a good distance from that play. Again, we're moving up the floor, so it's difficult to be stationary, but it is possible to be stationary if we put ourselves in a good position. We know, we anticipate the play and when this player is going to make an action, and we become stationary to referee that, and then we move again. So this play, we see that this player has lunged and is already lunging and making a play on the ball. This referee decided to not come to a stationary position and has kept moving. And we see if we play it just a little bit further, they've now got almost no distance from the play. Okay, so this is something that happens very frequently in a game. We have a little bit of one-on-one pressure in the backcourt. What we'd like to see on this play is this referee, yes, they can start out running up the court because right now there's some distance. Right here, even a little bit back. As soon as we see that this player is starting to make a move forward towards the ball, let's come into a stationary position and let's referee that play. Okay. If we don't in that situation, and we keep coming here, when they're this close together, absolutely now, when we're this close to the play, we need to build in some distance from that play. We need to come to a stationary position. We need to build in distance, let these players get a little farther away from us to reduce our chance of an emotional call. Okay, so right off the bat, some good distance and stationary points to talk about that official. If we go, keep going to where the shot goes up. So if we just go to here, it looks like all three officials have good distance from the play. This official is not way out at center court. They're in a good position, a good distance. They're behind the ball, and everyone is in a good distance and stationary right now. We go to where the shot happens. So if we see that this shot is going up, we saw that that official will just make a tiny little position adjustment to the left so that they can see more of the space between the offensive player number 17 and the defensive player in red who's closing out on the shot. So they just make that tiny little position adjustment to the left so that they can see some space and referee that shot stationary. Okay. Now we'll talk about the throw-in again from the new trail now. So this referee who's down on the baseline. Well, we see that they're stationary. We see that they do a good job to remain stationary when the ball is first passed in, because if they start to move forward, they're going to go ahead of the ball. They're going to have this player in red who just passed the ball in, who's now in the way, and they won't be able to officiate that play. So they do a good job to remain stationary to referee that inbound play. Again, they're still stationary. They're refereeing that screen. It's a very good job by the trail official so far. Now, however, we're still stationary way back here. Not a horrible position, but what happens when this player steps through? What kind of look does this official now have? They have what we call a closed look. They can't see any space between offensive and defensive players. They can't see what's happening. They have no way of knowing, is this action by the two yellow players, is this action clean? Are they touching the ball, or are they fouling the red player? Okay. That's simply to do with their position. And I really don't think that there's any position that that referee could be in to properly be able to see that. Okay. What we would like to see is this referee on the sideline right next to the table here. They kind of just bail out and don't help with any of that pressure in the backcourt. Okay. So even in two-person, we need to be sticking around and helping with a little bit of the pressure in the backcourt on presses. Okay. So we can see in this still image that this referee over on the table side is walking away, walking away, walking away. What we want to see is that referee comes to a stationary position in a place where they have a good open angle on that play, because if they did stay right where this little logo is on the table side, just below the white line, if they stay right there, then they'll have a great angle on that play right there. They'll be looking straight in through it. Okay. So decent job done by this official here in the trail position. They do a good job on the throw-in to remain stationary, to keep good distance from the play, but then they guess. Okay. They don't have a good angle. They guess on this play. Whereas if this referee here had stayed in his correct position and stayed to help with the play, staying with the play, staying in a place that is good distance and stationary, they would be able to officiate that play. Okay. Any questions about that video? A little bit more of a complex one. if no questions, then that is it for our IoT presentations.
See one question on the board there.
One
Joel's got a
question.
question there.
For
Joel?
yeah, for the positioning of the referees, like on the one where the guy was in the NBA game, he was kind of on the floor, and I found the first trail official in the last one. Like I found them to be on the floor a little bit more. Is that like, as far as positioning goes, like should we be more like sideline to sideline, or should we be more in the play, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So as when we're refereeing in two person, there's a lot more movement onto the court and back off of the court because of how far across the court that we have to referee. Ideally, our setup position is, maybe one step inside the court. We should never be outside of the court as trail. We should always have both feet on the court. But our setup position is what we call sideline attached. So we want to be attached to the sideline. So, within a couple feet of the sideline for our setup position. Okay. That's just our setup. That's a guideline. When the play goes to the opposite side of the floor from where we are as trail and above the free throw line, that's still our responsibility as trail. So what we do in those situations is we need to be behind the ball and behind the last player, but then we can step out, and we call it working the arc. And then we can step out onto the floor, get a better angle on those plays that are on the opposite side of the floor from where we are. But then again, when that play dissipates and when that play moves, we then want to come back to being sideline attached in our setup position. So yes, we do have some leeway to move onto the floor when we're refereeing as two person, as trail, but our setup position is sideline attached. So if we can referee from a position close to the sideline, that's where we should be trying to referee from. But if we need to move onto the court and work the arc out towards the center of the court to see what's on the opposite side of the court, then that's well within our right to do that. Any other questions about anything that we discussed this evening? Doesn't look like it, so Mike, I'll come to you.
Quiet and shy group, eh?
Yeah, not nearly as talkative as we were in person. So
No, well, it's definitely easier to talk in person. So
yeah,
cool. Well, that was awesome. Appreciate that, Ryan. Hopefully everybody got some good stuff out of that. That was well done, well presented. A reminder: it is recorded, so once Jeff or I get it figured out how to share the videos, we'll get that done. Just a couple of quick things, and then we'll let you guys go. Number one, there's a few new officials on here and a few others that I've emailed, looking for you to complete your profile in Horizon. So you should have an email link for that, and you just basically got to confirm your email addresses, name, and date of birth, and a few other things, and get that done. And then I sent out an invite. Hopefully I did it properly, but to all the officials that I believe are in years brand new or have got a year in, you should see an invite for a meeting on Monday night, October 21st. So we're going to do a clinic specifically for you folks, a little tamed down from, the IoTs and some of the big rule stuff, because we want to get you guys started and get you going. Then Tuesday night, I believe we're still going to go forward with session 3. And then on the 30th, again, for the officials, brand new years 1, 2, we're going to do an in-gym session. So probably be a good couple of hours, but we'll go through a lot of stuff right on the floor. So positioning on the floor, where you should be looking, making calls, reporting fouls, all that kind of stuff. So, I'll just, Jeff, you got anything you want to add before we sign off here?
Yeah, so just on those two clinics that were catering to the younger crowd, that
Yeah.
certainly doesn't mean that anyone who has been refereeing for a few years, if you want to come out
Yep.
to both of those sessions, I would recommend it actually. The stuff that we cover there is really, really good stuff. So it's great for the younger ones that are just starting, but it's also good as a refresher for many of us. And just a comment on the stuff that Ryan's been going through. This is this is great stuff. Sometimes we just focus on, oh, I just need to be able to make calls correctly, and that's what's going to make me a great referee. Well, that's true to a certain extent, but you need the foundation. You need all of these techniques to be able to put yourself in the right position, to be able to be able to be looking at the right things. So these IoTs, and thanks to Ryan for putting these on, it's been great. I mean, I've been refereeing for 27 years, and it's great to see someone go through that stuff. And when he talks, I always pick up one or two things. So it's great that we have Ryan as a resource. So big thanks to him. But yeah, for those clinics, if it's open to anyone that wants to come. So don't think that it's just going to be young stuff that we're doing. It's going to be good stuff. So if you want to come out, by all means, come on out Monday and come on out for the gym session as well. This is something separate, but we'll also be doing a little bit more stuff through the year with our younger officials and also officials that want to referee high school. I haven't really talked about that with Mike or JP yet, but it's something that I've got on my plate. And Ryan, if you want to help out with that stuff, that'd be great too.
Right on. Right on. I remember JP mentioned this last week, but for those officials looking to develop and kind of move along, if you can go out and watch some games. So watch games when, Ryan is refereeing or Jeff is refereeing, JP, those are some of the best officials in the province. And it's you can really learn by just don't watch the game, watch the referees. And you'll be amazed at what you pick up, everything from positioning and stuff that Ryan talked about tonight. But good crisp signals and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so anyway, again, a great crowd tonight, and look forward to seeing some of you again next week. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks,
guys. Thank you.
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 Thanks, Mike.